Your breath is yours alone. It's your greatest friend, your lover, your teacher. So be gentle, be attentive, be kind. Your breath is your own. Man of Mastery, episode 29, Ready to Grow. So growth is really what this thing is all about at Man of Mastery, from the podcast to the website to Facebook to Instagram to the community and everything else that we're going to be doing with it in the future. It's about growth. You can see it in the guests. Last week, Ben Killoy talked about running towards fear and fear being an indicator of things that are important in your life that you need to really think about doing. Next week coming up, I'll give you a bit of a preview. We have a guest named Laval St. Germain, who is an adventurer. He holds records in mountaineering. He's rode the Atlantic solo. He's skied and biked in some amazing places in the world. But he does it all not only from a place of wanting to adventure and grow and face fear, but a place of risk management and finding ways to come home safely to his wife and his kids and his family. And this week's episode, Ready to Grow, it's about fear. It's about growth through adversity, or what's scientifically called post-traumatic growth. We'll cover that. We'll also talk about cognitive bias and the stories we tell ourselves. We'll talk about something called tactical breath and maybe another breath technique. All this in the context of recapping a variety of recent experiences and events that I've been through where there's a lot of lessons in the failures. I want to talk about teammates, commitment to team, vulnerability with teammates, and maybe in the context of cognitive bias and the stories we tell ourselves, a bit about emotional control. So if you listen through the episode, you'll walk away with at least 2 breathing techniques and some thoughts on breathing you can use daily and situationally. I've learned those as a coach in training with Unbeatable Mind. So if you're not familiar with it, this is a set of tools and training methods that combine everything from ancient wisdom practices to cutting-edge modern methods, best practices in human development, ways to develop as a complete person. And it's a framework that was created by 20-year Navy SEAL veteran Commander Mark Devine, based on his experiences not only in the Navy, but as a martial artist, a yoga and meditation teacher, and he's also been an adjunct professor of leadership. So from this episode, you'll get some hints on self-awareness and emotional control and conflict, examples and takeaways of growth through adversity, and where and how to start and measure your own pursuit of mastery. So one quote I dug up this week that I think is really spot on is from Michael Jordan, the basketball legend, right? He says, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game's winning shot and I missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." So I couldn't think of a better way to kick off this week's topic of growth through adversity and growth through failure. But before we jump in, I want to talk about an event that Laval, next week's guest, has spoke very highly of. And then if you heard a few weeks ago, Patrick Sweeney, the fear guru, he is also a big fan of an event called Relentless MV. That's Relentless Martha's Vineyard. It's coming up again this summer. It's a gathering of entrepreneurs and executives who are dedicated to growth through challenging themselves, through self-improvement, to setting big, audacious goals. It was created by a guy named John Kane, fueled around his own passion, and he brings together annually a fairly small, intimate group of guests, those executives and entrepreneurs, together with speakers and VIPs like Laval, like Patrick, to get a real hands-on, immersive VIP type of experience. That comes up again this June. And don't get me wrong, this is not an advertisement. This is not an affiliate sale type of thing. This is just something really, I think, useful and potentially valuable that I've come across. Not only did I hear a lot about it from Laval and Patrick, but I spoke to John myself. I'm a big fan of the concept and I plan to attend. So if anyone's interested in that, and if you're on our email mailing list, there is a discount code that John's willing to offer the group, the Man of Mastery group, to attend at quite a nice discount to this year's event. All right, with that, let's dive into today's episode 29, Ready to Grow. Let me set the scene to start this off. Close your eyes or vividly imagine it's 6 o'clock in the morning. Sun's not even cracking the horizon yet. It's still dark, and you stand outdoors in the wind in shorts and a t-shirt facing the Pacific Ocean, watching the waves crash, feeling the cold breeze coming off the water, knowing that you're about to spend the next 2 hours getting dunked in that water, tossed around in the surf, crawling through sand, shivering cold, and who knows what else. And in front of you, watching the fear, watching your nervous energy, is a coach. You know he's done all this before himself and way, way more. Pretty small in stature, amazingly calm, just a presence about him. And he looks at each of you in the eye, he looks you in the eye, and he goes, there's only one thing you need to ask yourself right now. Look at that water. You know what's coming, and you need to ask yourself, are you ready to grow? Are you ready to grow today? That was the scene for me at an event not too long ago, and Coach Rich, and his words really stuck with me. Are you ready to grow? And that's how I feel anytime I'm facing down one of those kind of things, whether it's a physical event or something else, or a tough situation or a discussion or a conversation or something at work. What's the growth opportunity? And are you ready to grow? Are you ready to go do something that's uncomfortable or that's difficult? Are you ready to grow? So that's the main theme for today's episode. But the first topic I want to start with is breathing. And in particular, before we jump in on breath, let's put it in context. We have to do it to live. We do it all the time. It's the first thing that we do when we come into the world, and it's the last thing we do before we check out. So one of my coaches who has studied breath for 20 years, and that'll give you an idea of how complex and deep and detailed this topic can get, she shared a quote from one of her teachers, Gary, and it goes a little something like this. Your breath is yours alone. It's your greatest friend, your lover, your teacher. So be gentle, be attentive, be kind. Your breath is your own. Your breath is yours and yours alone. So for something that significant, maybe it warrants some study. Maybe it warrants better understanding. You know how to breathe, right? How'd you learn? Did you learn? Is it something your innate nervous system just does for you? Did you ever give it any more thought? Did you learn as a kid? Did you relearn it? Have you ever really thought about it? Well, let's talk about some of the mechanics. Another thing that Coach Catherine says is that the nose is for breathing. The mouth is for eating and speaking. Okay. Yeah. No, I never thought of that before I heard it. Okay, there's nostril breathing and there's mouth breathing. Wow, there's a physiological difference. And then there's the belly, the diaphragm, the muscle that moves the chest cavity and the lungs to collapse and to expand, to breathe air in and out, to create that pressure that moves the air in and out. So for purposes of what we're going to talk about here today, we're going to talk only about nostril breathing. And as we covered on an earlier podcast, nostril breathing will calm you down, lower your heart rate, lower your stress levels, in contrast to mouth breathing, which will upregulate everything, create the fight or flight type of stress hormones. So for today, in terms of nasal breathing, when we talk about breathing in, your belly should expand as you use that diaphragm to first bring air deep into your lungs and then into your upper chest. And if you're breathing deeply enough, even into your upper sort of lungs and chest. And then as you exhale, it should be the reverse of that pattern, from the top down, and that muscle, that diaphragm, that belly will tuck in. So as you breathe in, the belly expands. As you breathe out, that stomach and that belly will suck in a bit. Let's just back up a little bit to the benefits of why we're even talking about this today. So we're going to talk about a couple techniques that can bring calm to mind and body and give you clarity, reduce stress, oxygenate your body. It can bring health to all those facets. You can use it at work. You can use it pre-game. You can use it in the middle of a game or a run. It's just got so many different applications, and it's very, very simple. So let's start with tactical breath. So the tactical breath is, again, nasal breathing in and out, inhaling and exhaling through the nose. This is going to be a 4 count. So you'll inhale, counting to 4, and then immediately turn around without holding your breath and exhale for a count of 4. Inhaling for 4, exhaling for 4. That's all through nostril breathing, and that will have a very calming effect on your physiology. One thing I would really recommend is using a timer for this. You're going to want to keep it to that 4 count, or it can be 3 and 3, 5 and 5, but equal, or to the extent that they're not equal, and this is why it's important maybe to use a timer until you get that cadence, is that the exhale should always be as long as or longer than the inhale. So in this case, let's just make them even at a 4 count inhale, and with your timer, a 4 count equal exhale. In and out through your nose. That's the tactical breath. So I would challenge you, if you don't already do this, to start breathing that way as you run, as you drive, as you go through your day, as you maybe spend some time in a morning routine doing a bit of breathing. Now, that may be easy for a bunch of you. For anybody like me, all of a sudden, when I started doing that, it didn't work so well. So I realized I had to start training some other things, address some physiology, and retrain my ability to breathe smoothly that way. And it's still a work in progress, but if you find that hard, know that it's not only you, and if you want some other direction or hints on that, feel free to reach out. And then the second, let's expand this 4 count in and 4 count out to a second technique that's very similar, but it's called box breathing. And if you imagine maybe you inhaled up and you exhaled down, if you were drawing lines, imaginary lines in the air with your finger, a box would be very similar. Inhale, you draw the vertical side of a square. And now we're going to add a hold of your breath. So inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. So if you imagine that's the box pattern. Inhale, draw the line up, hold, line across, exhale, line down, hold, line across. So you've just drawn a square or a box. That's the box breathing. And there are 4 equal sides of that square because it's a 4 count. Or again, it can be equal at a 3 count or equal at a 5 count. All the inhale, exhale, and holds being of the same duration. Equal, that's the box pattern. Again, this is all nostril breathing. And this is a great one, again, to use maybe in a morning ritual, or you could use it as a spot drill. I like to take my son and have him do a few rounds of box breathing right before a race or right before a soccer game, maybe as he closes his eyes and just focuses on the breath or focuses on his visualization for the way he's going to approach the game. So I would challenge you to start trying that, see how long you can do it, and notice what your mind does. If you can keep it calm and focused on just the breathing, or if it runs all over the place, and that will give you some observation on maybe opportunities to continue doing exercises like this to calm the mind and focus. And done as a morning routine, maybe enter the day very much focused and calm in how you approach things. So give that a try. On both of those, the tactical breathing and the box breathing, there's a ton more information out there. Some people call it other things. If you'd like me to steer you to anything or you have any questions, feel free to reach out. So that's today's actionable piece on breathing. Let's talk about cognitive bias, emotional control, and we can use it as an example of applying breath. So cognitive bias, an example of that is, hey, I just bought a white Cadillac SUV, and now everywhere I look are white Cadillac SUVs. It's just the brain tends to focus and filter things because otherwise there's too much information, and our brain likes to make things fairly simple. So in making things simple, we have these things that either we've created or learned or somehow carry stories we tell ourselves. And once you start to realize that that's the case, you can also have the opportunity to step back a bit and challenge yourself or observe for yourself whether those stories are real or they're still applicable or they're still true. So I'll give you a quick example of this, and this is also where it comes not only from the stories we tell ourselves angle, but emotional control. So last weekend with the family in the car, we were pulling out of the neighborhood in a little bit of a rush, a little bit behind schedule to get to a soccer game. And as I turn right at a stop sign, all of a sudden, right behind me, I see a convertible sports car right on my rear bumper. I mean, this guy is riding me, but then he hits the gas, he shoots around the side of me, and then whips in front of me. So he's just like cut around and cut me off, and he's thrown his hand up out the the convertible roof, like, what, this guy flipping me off? What is he doing? And all of a sudden, my heart rate goes through the roof. Stress, fight or flight, or fight, all that kind of stuff goes crazy. And I'm thinking, like, what is going on with this guy? First I'm thinking, did I cut him off? Did I not see him? And now he's angry because I made a mistake. And, how did I not see him? And then I'm thinking, like, why is this guy driving like this? He's endangering my family. Why is he endangering my family? All of a sudden I feel like he's attacking me. And then I feel like the way he's acting so aggressively with his driving, maybe he is attacking or challenging me. The thing just starts to spiral. And my wife's trying to calm me down, and we pull up at a light, and who is it? And what's the deal? Is my story anywhere near correct? No. Of course, that's where this is going. It's my neighbor. It's a buddy. And he was like playing around. Maybe the driving wasn't safe, but he's like horsing around, kind of showing me his new convertible, and he was just waving to me out the roof. So when I pull up at the stoplight, it's not like some guy challenging the safety of my family or challenging my manhood. It's my neighbor, my buddy, just like being friendly. So that's a bit of an embarrassing one to share, but it's a great and it's a simple example of just, we have these snap judgments that we make. We have biases that we carry around with us. We have things that we've formed from different experiences in our lives, and that's our default programming. We'll revert to those unless we bring more awareness to it and start to realize that that's a process, and maybe start to challenge it and see if or where it needs to change. And one great way to find an opportunity to do that in that kind of situation is, go back to the first topic, breathe. Before you jump to some conclusion, before you just jump to act, I'll say, take some of those tactical breaths, 4 count in, 4 count out. You do that 1, 2, 3, 5 times. It's going to, 1, calm you down and let you make a decision from a better place. And 2, it's going to give you a little bit of a window of opportunity with that calm to really question what's going on. Is my assumption correct? Is what I'm observing factual? And, the ways I'm thinking about drawing conclusions from that and maybe even acting, are those valid, or can I challenge those? Or, what? Maybe if that story had been spot on at the same time, so what? Let it go, right? Nothing ultimately happened. Move on. So cognitive bias, emotional control, breathing, and self-awareness, great chance to bring it all together. Okay, so continuing on the topic of maybe failures, breakdowns, vulnerability, or just being transparent about some of those challenges and areas for growth, let's talk about growth through adversity. Or I mentioned post-traumatic growth. So that's a science that's being studied about how traumas give us somehow as humans an opportunity for growth. Or, I call it growth through adversity. I've heard other people talk about cognitive distortion, design disturbances. There are certainly those crucibles in life that life throws at us through no choice of our own. But a lot of what we're talking about here is designing to go out there and do those things. Put yourself by design into man-made crucibles, into situations where you're experiencing some sort of a trauma, facing a fear, something that gives you an opportunity to grow. So you're attacking that on purpose, but at the same time, you're also training yourself to be better equipped to deal with those crucibles and the challenges that life may throw at you unexpectedly. Okay, so that's the idea here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a few stories of my own experience recently that don't in themselves have necessarily any actionable takeaways, but the concept of growth through adversity overall, the takeaway is go find yourself a scary crucible, set an audacious goal, maybe make it a few months away and come up with an action plan to get there, figuring out how you're going to get there and stay on track to it. So that's really your action item. But here are a few of my own, and maybe you can learn something that you do take away from these. So you've heard me talk about doing my first Spartan Ultra recently. So this is a 30, 31, 32 mile race that I did with obstacles at altitude in Lake Tahoe. And this is another one that starts pre-dawn. This is like 6:15, 6:30 in the morning. This was September. It was crazy cold and windy. It ended up snowing that day in Tahoe. And I was there getting ready to enter the start corral, listening to the announcements. The national anthem has come on, and I'm trying to get my hydration vest on, something I'd bought for the event that I only wore once or twice before in training. And I could not figure out how to clasp it closed, how to cinch it on and connect it together. And I had this momentary panic of, well, how do I do this? Did something fall off? Am I not going to be able to use it? And what if I can't run without it? And I don't think I can go this distance without carrying my own hydration. I mean, I literally was talking myself down this spiral, to the point of like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing out here? Maybe I don't belong here. I didn't practice with this thing, right? Like all the negative self-talk you can imagine, to the point of questioning whether I should pull out or even start the race. So I finally just said, hey, cut it out, right? I sat down, I took the thing off, took a moment to breathe, got in a place there was some lighting. I could look at the thing and just figured out, like, no, nothing had fallen off. Okay, great. Here's how it closes together when I put it back on and I wear it. So it was something that simple that took 2 seconds to figure out once I slowed it down and just kind of quit the panic spiral and breathed and took a little bit of time to assess the situation. All right, here's another one that I don't know, I personally find a little fascinating. I think it's interesting. I also did a solo cast from an event, the SEALFIT Crucible bootcamp style thing called 20X, the 12-hour overnight that I did back in the summer. And in the couple weeks leading up to that, I talk about in that solo episode, that podcast from a few months ago, I talk about how I talk about the fear going into that thing, to say it bluntly, in particular, the couple weeks leading up to it. But one thing I don't think I mentioned at the time and that I realized after the fact is not only was I consciously trying to address the thing, but subconsciously I realized I kept basically injuring myself. So I ran myself into the ground. I ended up with a chest cold. I made a bad decision to go out and play indoor soccer a few days right before that, pulled a groin muscle. I jumped barefoot onto concrete off of a 5 or 6 foot tall wall. I mean, I really think that I was subconsciously understanding that there was no way I was gonna quit or pull out of the event, but that if I found myself injured, I would have no choice but to quit before I showed up. All right, so here's a couple more. I'll try to run through this a little bit quickly because we still have 1 or 2 more topics to hit. So last weekend, I was signed up for a half marathon, and man, I did not want to do this thing. I had no motivation to do it. I really signed up because another buddy was going to, and as a result, a third guy, a friend of mine, signed up to run it with me. But man, come the eve of the race, I had no motivation. I mean, I was just looking at this thing as, if nothing else, it's a training run for my next race, but flat, run 13.1 on asphalt, half marathon, just had no interest to me. And again, the rationalization starts. I mean, if I went down the list, my neck was hurting, my Achilles, my back, I had a stomach bug for a few days. There were like 5 or 6 things that could have just taken me out of it, or I could have just used to take myself out of it. But what I really went with is my buddy had committed to do it with me. And so I made my commitment back to him that I was going to show up and give it everything I had. And I'm glad he motivated me to do it. We had a great time doing it. We had a great chat through it. And I think in the end, we probably motivated each other, but I know he's the one that ultimately got me out there. And I think that for me, the lesson learned there is the power in the commitment to not only yourself, but to somebody else, so that you have accountability to follow through on those things that are hard. All right, and then I've got one about the ice bath and the surf torture at another Mark Divine Unbeatable Mind event from a couple months ago. So let's see, how did this time out? On the Saturday morning, there was a choice of 2 different workout sessions. So either you could go to the yoga session at the resort, or you could be bussed down to the beach for surf torture, rolling around in that cold Pacific that I mentioned from a year ago, and in the sand and burpees and bear crawl and all this other kind of stuff. And my 2 close teammates from the coach and training cohort were committed to the surf torture. And that's what I wanted to do as well. I wanted to do the beach workout on Saturday morning, but I really didn't want to do the beach workout. I was scared. I was scared of the water. I was scared of the cold. I was scared of my ability to breathe through all that. And I had injured my back a couple days earlier. Maybe this goes back to that subconscious thing again. But in any case, I was going into it not feeling good physically. And on one hand, I took the advice of, hey, just, be kind to yourself. Maybe you dial it back and you do the yoga. And that's what I did. And there's certainly something valid in that, in recognizing when it's time to dial it back a little bit and being kind to yourself. On the other hand, the evening before, and we'll go back to commitment, I committed to my teammates that I was going to do the beach workout with them. And I even woke up on that Saturday morning with the intention myself to fight, despite the fear, and maybe using the Ben Koloyism of, if it's scary, it's important. I woke up Saturday morning headed towards with the intention of doing the beach workout. But man, I'll tell you, I checked in with myself throughout that drive, realizing that, of how scared I was of it. And I don't know what I did to myself, but I absolutely sabotaged it. I forgot things probably like 5 different times that I had to run back in the house for. All this stuff to the point of being late to where just as I pulled up, the bus to the beach pulled out. And I'm completely convinced that I took myself out of it. Now, I probably could have just swung the car around and followed the bus to the beach, but I didn't. I went to the yoga session. Hey, in the end, it was a great session, and it was probably the right move for my back. But I do realize that I let my teammates down in my commitment to that one, and I should have just made a choice earlier on. But either way, in terms of recognition of kind of facing fear and things that may go on, there's something to be learned there about. Again, it's kind of the either the conscious or the subconscious or both, having some awareness to step back and kind of see what you're doing to yourself and maybe approach it differently to just hit it head on and figure out where you're at. And the other one I mentioned from that same event was Sunday morning. So this is the culmination in a way of this whole thing. And what you get the opportunity to do is sit in it's like a horse trough that they would drink from. And you get to get in this thing full of water and freshly dumped bags of ice. So this thing's got a good layer of ice cubes floating on top of it. The water is freezing cold, and everybody is doing a little body weight workout in front of you on the grass as we all take turns. Probably 100 people with 3 ice baths. We're all taking turns going on the ice bath. And you have the opportunity to get in there, get your breathing right, get your mental focus right, and then completely submerge yourself So your head, your face, everything, you are under the ice water, under the layer of ice for about 10 seconds is what they're looking for from you. So can you hold your breath 10 seconds? Of course you can. Everybody can, right? But the mental ability and the physical manifestation of trying to do that in freezing cold water is a whole different animal. So I was out there on the grass working out with those same two coach and training cohort teammates. And my one buddy went up first. He was smiling like a kid in a candy store. He had a blast. Boom, he is in it. He's back, and he's back to working out with an even bigger grin on his face. Like, it couldn't have been more fun for him, or at least he convinced us that was the case. But he was in, out, success, bam, back to the workout. And the coaches are walking around, and they're, each time a bath would open up, they're grabbing the next person. Hey, come on up. So I just, I decided for myself, I'm getting this one done early on. I don't want to be, just waiting to get picked, and it's an hour and a half into it, and I'm the last guy. I'm just going to raise my hand, and I'm going to get after it. So I raise my hand. Coach Boomer grabs me. He takes me up. I get in the thing, and he's coaching me through it. Tactical breath, just breathe. Visualize you're in your hot tub. You're at the beach. Hang on to what's driving you, your why, what you're getting energy from, micro goals, and breathing. I just lost it. I'm like, what's a tactical breath? And he's like, come on, it's 10 seconds, just go. So boom, I go under, and I completely lost it. Like I couldn't decide on whether I take a deep breath before I go under or exhale, or what's this tactical breathing thing all about. And I think I took like a half a breath, and I went under, and I immediately felt like I was out of breath. And so I made it a very short time, probably about 5 seconds, before I popped back up out of the water in kind of a fight or flight panic. Coach Boomer talked me back through it. All right, get your breathing right. Of course, this whole time I'm sitting in the ice bath, trying to get myself calmed back down, trying to convince myself I'm going back in it, trying to address the failure, figure out what went wrong, and get after it again, get my breathing right, and then figure out all the other stuff he said. Why am I here? So he said a couple insightful things. He said, draw energy from all your teammates here working out in front of you. The sun is coming up. Think about your why. And I thought about my son and my wife and my family. I was wearing the same braided wristband my son made me before the 20X event. And I went back in. So I went back under, and I was there, and I'm thinking like, man, it's got to be at least 5 seconds. So I'm doing good, better than last time. Gosh, it's got to be close to 10 seconds. And he hadn't tapped me out, but I wasn't going to come back out and have to go a third time. So I'm like hanging out. Come on, it's got to be 10 seconds. Nobody's tapped my hand yet. And finally, I feel like I ran out of breath. And so I came back out looking at Coach, like, did I make the 10 seconds? And he goes, 20 seconds, you killed it. 4X your 5 second first attempt. So I come out of this thing, and at this point, it's taken a while, right? So I kind of recover, and then I head back over to my teammates on the lawn, and they're looking at me kind of weird. I was like, what's going on? So afterwards, we're talking, and they're like, dude, you're a stud. You're hanging out in that ice bath. You had to be in there like 5 minutes. Like, how long did you go under for? You must have just been killing it. And I go, guys, no, I was up there this whole time because I failed. I failed the first time, and I had to take time to fight the fight or flight, the fear and the panic. And I had to reset and figure out how to do it. And they coached me through it. And I got it on the second time, but no, I wasn't up there a long time because I was killing it. I was up there a long time because I failed, and I had to figure out what to do about that. And they were like, that's the coolest thing. Like, you could have just said like, yeah, I killed it. But the vulnerability to share that you failed, and not only you failed, but what'd you do to go back after that? It was a cool thing, not only for me, but for us as a team to come together around. So take what you will away from that and figure out maybe how you apply it in some vulnerability, in some transparency with your team, whether that's your team at work or your team at home, whatever that might be. All right, and maybe just the last thing I wanted to hit on for today around this whole topic of getting started, and hopefully you have, but if you haven't, what is mastery, and what is this journey. And I've had people say like, God, I can't believe what you're doing. It's crazy. It's so far out there. There's no way I could do what you're doing. I don't even know like where to start. I don't even know if this is for me. I'd like it to be, but maybe I'm not even capable of that first step. All that is junk. All right. So there is no such thing as mastery as a destination. It is completely a journey. It is completely a path. I think anybody who says that they've hit enlightenment or mastery, either they're the Dalai Lama or they're full of it. I don't think anybody is sitting up on the mountaintop as a guru on this stuff with it all conquered. We've all got stuff to work on. We're all somewhere on a path. Maybe a step ahead, maybe two steps behind somebody else, but that's all relative, and it doesn't even matter. You should only compare yourself to yourself. So in that sense, we're all on the same journey, and the only way to start is just to act and just do it. Figure out where to start, what to do, that one first step, just to simply take action. So to that end, if it's something that I can be of help with, if you have questions, if you don't know where to start, if you need suggestions, if I can point you to information, material, coaches, anything that can help you, let me know. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to help. But that's what this whole thing is about. It's about action. It's about growth. It's about learning and progress. And that path, that worthy goal of mastery, which will probably never be reached, is a jagged path. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have failures. Embrace them, be vulnerable about them, be transparent about them, learn from them. And I hope you enjoyed what I've shared today. That's one piece of my recent journey, and hope to continue to learn from it and continue to share what I can. Last thing for today, I mentioned in a preview of this podcast that I may have a book that I also wanted to touch on that I've been reading and learned from. It's more complex and probably more time consuming than I thought or that we have time for left in this episode. So I'll save that one for another day. I'm gonna wrap this one up here. Episode 29, Ready to Grow. Again, this is all about growth through adversity. So we talked about being stronger as a team through things like vulnerability. We talked about facing down fears, using those opportunities that fear being a signal to lean into, and how those man-made crucibles, those things that are a little traumatic and a little uncomfortable, can really be catalysts for growth. Talked about cognitive bias and the stories we tell ourselves, emotional control around those, and as it all starts with and ends with breath, we talked about breathing, and I gave you a couple specific breathing techniques that, again, you can read more about, search for, learn about, or if you have any questions, seek me out. I'm happy to help. Hopefully I can be of service. That's it for this week, guys. Next week, Laval Saint Germain.